Good morning, everybody. I am Ilaria, and she is Agnese, and we are from the press group for this 12th edition of the Foscari Short Film Festival. And we are very happy to have here Peter Lord, who yesterday made a super interesting masterclass on clay animation, and indeed in some of his work at the Arman Animation, which is his company. He's the co-founder of this company, and so thank you for being here. So we start with a question on a bit on the general frame of animation, in or history of animation, we can say. So animated movies are usually considered to be products for children, and at least maybe in Italy as well, they are not really, they do not receive enough recognition sometimes. And so we wanted to know how it is, how it was at the beginning of your career, and if something changed maybe now, and how do you feel about that?
Yes, it's a very interesting conversation, because what you said, that animation is for children, is probably still what the majority of people in the world think, I imagine. So, you know, those of us that are in animation or in film don't see it that way. You know, we just see animation as a form of filmmaking, a form of storytelling, and it's a very elaborate form, and it takes a lot of time and effort. But that's what it is. It's a form of storytelling. So in animation, you could tell any story. You could tell, you know, a terrible tragedy, or a terrifying horror film, or a slapstick comedy, or an adult comedy with bad language and stuff. You can do anything. It's just a way. But when I started, which was like half a century. No, that can't be true. When I started, then I think, I guess our first work was for children, but that was because that was the only outlet, the only people that were commissioning animation was for children. And personally, because I was interested in animation, I would see things like, there was a film, when I was a teenager, there was a film of the Beatles music called Yellow Submarine, and yeah, that was very, very influential, and that was for a general audience. That wasn't just for kids, that was for people. It's for people. And so that was inspiring. And then one day it's interesting. We made a film which was not for children. It was called Down and Out, and it was about a homeless guy trying to get a meal in a hostel for homeless people. So that was kids. That's not kid stuff. We did this film, but we did it like in a vacuum. Like we didn't think we were part of a movement or part of a trend or anything. We did it because it was an offer. It was work. So we did it, and then that film went to a festival in Zagreb, in Croatia, and then we went with it for the first time, and then it was as if somebody opened the doors to a huge world that we didn't know existed, a world of animation for adults. You know, and all the people there were, you know, they were like me, they had grey beards, and they were you know, intellectuals and artists and stuff, and they were all making these interesting, challenging films. So that was a great education, that anything is possible, and that's what I believe now. And now, in a funny way, we come back to the same place, that animation can be for anybody, but in practice, almost all the money in the business is devoted to kids' films, or as we say, family films. Family film sounds better than kids. Yeah, so it's a film that a 5-year-old can enjoy with their parents and their grandparents.
So the other question is about music.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday at the masterclass you talked about the importance of the music in order to convey emotions and feelings
Yes.
of the characters.
Yes.
So in absence of visual hints, would you say that music in some cases speaks more than words?
Well, I would. I think you're right. This is a good point, and I do think that. And I am not at all musical. I mean, when we get to making a film, and we get to the musical part, I really feel like a foolish child, because I don't have the judgment for it. I can't. So I just say honestly, I trust the composers very much. But this I do know. It's amazing that you can work on a film. Let's just take a film, Chicken Run. You can work on a film for nearly 5 years with a crew of 200 people, working away every hour of the day, work, and you make the film, and then the composer comes in at the end with his or her music and can really change it. I mean, it's amazing. The power of music is prodigious. It's, you could, I guess you could take a classic film that everyone loves and put on a different soundtrack, and you would feel very differently about it. It's, but unfortunately, it is a language that, like I say, I don't really understand it. And it's very hard to talk to a composer and say, could you make it a bit more, well, just make it a bit better. But but yesterday I showed one film called Adam, which was a short 6-minute film, which is funny. It's meant to be a funny film. It is meant to be a funny film. And when I finished it, the composer, a nice guy, Stuart Gordon, he was called, he wrote some music. We talked about it, of course. He wrote some music, and then he played it to me. And I thought, wow, that's not it. That's not the film. And he had made it. He'd made it tragic. Now, the story is about Adam, the first person, and God, and it is. He's represented as being very, very alone on the world. So there's just there's one person, one human being on this small planet, and it's a joke about. There's jokes about abandonment and loneliness and regret, and the jokes about these things. And his music initially was very serious, so when you saw it, you felt really sad the whole time, and so there was quite a shock, and I said, we need to change it, and he did it again. And if I'm honest, it's still a little bit sadder than I intended, but so it's a very dramatic demonstration of how big is the influence of music.
Thanks. And the other question is more technical.
Oh dear.
So during the animation making process, do you follow strictly the original plan? Or are there often changes in progress? Is there space for improvisation in stop motion animation world?
Good. It's a very good question, because there is in stop motion more than most animation. I mean, let's talk about a feature film. And a feature film is a gigantic creature. It's a huge organism full of hundreds of people working away, and it's very strictly controlled. It kind of has to be. So the length of the shots, the number of characters in shot, for example, camera moves, these things have to be planned, and there are people doing spreadsheets and making charts to make sure that you are on schedule and on budget, actually. And in the world of CG animation, computer animation, I noticed that really there's very little room to improvise in there. But in stop motion, there is a lot of room to improvise, because after all that planning, one day you come to the studio floor, and one day you have the camera and the puppet, and then you do the performance. And there's a lot of spontaneity in that, because you can, as a director or as an animator, you can have a new idea at the last minute. You can have a new idea actually while you're shooting, because you know, everyone knows, but I'll tell you, it's this slow, careful process. You know, move the puppet, take a frame, move the puppet, take a frame, move the puppet, take a frame, and so on. All that process. And as you're doing it, sometimes the shape of the puppet in your hands suggests something that you weren't thinking when you came into the room. And you think, oh, that's good. Oh, that's good. I could do that, or I could do that. So you really can be spontaneous within limitations. The limitations dictated by the producer, probably. But you can be spontaneous, and if you think, oh, this is too quick, you can. The shot that was meant to be 4 seconds really needs to be 6 seconds. You can change it as you're working. So that's why stop motion is a very interesting business, because I quickly described the physical process, but how was I going to phrase that? But even though it's so careful and slow, and ordinary people, normal people who aren't animators, you tell them, say, we shot 2 seconds today, and they think, oh, you're crazy, you know, what that? You must be mad. Or they say you must be very patient, which is really annoying, because we don't. It's not about patience. It's not about patience. They say you must be very impatient, or wow. But the funny thing is, I always think it's quite like a live performance, because in CG you can plan where the shot starts, and you can plan where the shot ends, and you can plan all the spaces in the middle, and you can do it roughly. I see. Then you can change it and do it, make it a bit better, and move the ending, and move the middle, and you can make it faster, slower, bigger. It's iterative. So one single shot or piece of performance evolves over a long time. But in stop motion, it's not like that. In stop motion, it's like live action, because you start the shot, and you start here, and you know where you want to end up, somewhere around here. But you can't establish that. You have to work from the beginning through to the end, just like life, you know. And you can't go back, and you can't change it. You have one take, really. Sometimes you have to change it afterwards because it wasn't good enough. But it has that vein of spontaneity, and because it has spontaneity, it has fear, because you don't want to screw it up, you know. And I always think the animators, they have quite a lot of adrenaline in their bodies as they work. They start the shot, and as they work towards the end, they really don't want to get it wrong at the end and mess up all that other work. So.
We had a spare question, but I don't know if it's too technical. We wanted to know, as you said before, you started half a century ago, and in the meanwhile, many things changed in technical things. Technology, in our everyday world, as in clay animation or animation in general. and maybe we wanted to know if there was a specific new instrument that you found particularly revolutionary in your work.
Yes, I mean, so now our production, although we're working with real objects, so three-dimensional objects, but all the production is digital, so it's recorded on digital cameras, you know, and stored on a hard drive. So it's all the information is digitized, very high level. And there's some great things about it that make life much easier. And perhaps the most dramatic one, I think, is it's now so easy to support your puppet with something made of steel, and you know. So if your puppet jumps in the air, you can put a bloody great piece of steel in the back, which looks terrible, of course, but then digitally you just paint it out, and so that makes it so much easier. So, in the past, I can remember you have to hang the puppet on a piece of fishing line, you know, just hang from the ski. And as you were trying to take the picture, he would probably turn around in the wind, and you have to wait to get the right place to click. So, you know, and it was very difficult to do that kind of thing. And also, like things that you wouldn't imagine, like often the puppets have, of course, they have arms, and they want to pick something up, but it's too heavy for them. So in the old days, that was really difficult. Whereas now you just put a rig on and it's easy. So that kind of thing on the studio floor is great. It's great. And as a result of digital recording, you shouldn't make any mistakes. In the past, you would make mistakes, and when you're working on film, in the old days, make a mistake and you wouldn't even know about it until the next day when you saw the finished film. But because you're now recording it on a screen as you go along, there should be no mistakes, and that's good. But as a result, everyone works very slowly and carefully. And so, when I was starting out, I might shoot 20 seconds in the day, and now people shoot 2 seconds in the day. Well, so okay, there's no comparison, because the 20 seconds were not very good, but they were okay. They were okay. At the time, they were fine, but now I wouldn't accept it. So, but I do think maybe the technology has slowed people down all too much. That there's a rhythm to animation, and there should be, and an energy to animation. You know, because you're kind of all day you're putting your energy into the puppet to make it live. And if that process is too slow, I think maybe you lose something of energy and something of spontaneity. But basically, generally speaking, I love the digital world. The other thing which is great is that the cameras are very small now. The cameras are just the size of an ordinary SLR camera. Whereas in the past, a film camera was this big, and your puppet was only this big. So it was like having a gigantic truck in the room. You know.
Yeah.
So I like small cameras and the digital world.
Thank you.
Okay.